Hey, what is up guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome to a bit of a different Gran Turismo 7 video. What I'm going to be doing with this new series is essentially talking about some of the history of some of Gran Turismo 7's most famous cars, starting out with a bit of a special one, the 1967 Ford GT40 Mark IV. A car which essentially brought around the end of an era for Le Mans racing, the Ford versus Ferrari era. I'm sure most of you have probably watched the movie on these two famous kind of brands going at it, and this one was really the final hurrah. So let's talk about the car itself. This is the 1967 Ford GT40 Mark IV. It was built around a reinforced J chassis. It has a 7-litre engine, the exact same that was in the Mark II, I believe. It's a more sleeker look, and I think you can probably tell that just from the design of this car in comparison to the other GT40 Le Mans cars. It was just a much more sleeker look. It was very aerodynamic, very kind of striking in the way it appears. As you can see, it has an exceptional top speed because of this. I believe hitting around about 212 miles per hour down the Musselland Street. It has a NASCAR styled roll cage, which was kind of put in there for safety. I believe it was Ken Miles, which sadly passed away while kind of test driving one of the J chassis cars previous to Le Mans. And because of that, it was all about safety. And it was actually credited as saving one of the driver's life during the 1967 race, where I believe he came out with a few broken ribs, but ultimately came away with his life. In terms of transmission, it's a 4-speed manual, so not a 5. It's gone back to a more kind of longer gear ratioed 4-speed manual. It's a little bit heavier. It comes in at 1,000 kilogram, putting out just over 500 brake horsepower. And altogether, this car only entered 2 races and won them both, that being the 12 hours of Sebring and then onto the very famous Le Mans 24-hour, which it won ahead of 2 Ferraris. So you may have noted that I did mention that this car only ran 2 races and won them both. The first of those was the 12 hours of Sebring, where only one Ford GT40 Mark IV actually entered the race, and well, it won it, with 2 very famous names at the hands of that car, being Mario Andretti and Bruce McLaren. So with 12 hours of Sebring won and out the way with only a single entry, obviously the next logical step was to take back Le Mans once again. Obviously this was in the era of the Ford versus Ferrari, a pretty much mythical thing at this point. Obviously through movies and kind of, articles and stuff, you can do a ton of research, and Ford was on a winning streak, and 1967 would essentially become the conclusion of this whole era of legendary Le Mans racing, where Ford would enter the Mark IV in its much more sleeker presentation up against the Ferrari 330 P4. So let's go back in time and talk about the 1967 Le Mans race. It was the 35th running of the event. It was outright won by a Ford GT40 Mark IV driven by Dan Gurney and AJ Foyt. They won after leading from the second hour, and in all honesty, at that point, they would just never look back. And this, well, it became the only all-American team, car, and all that good stuff to ever outright win Le Mans, even as of 2023 at the time of making this video. Now, a lot of people assume that the 1966 Ford GT40 winners were actually the ones to do that. However, this is, well, incorrect. Those Ford GT40s were actually manufactured in the United Kingdom, meaning that the 1967 winner, the Ford GT40 Mark IV, is still the only all-American team to actually outright win Le Mans. So was this race outright domination? In fact, no. Ferrari did manage to reclaim some pride, taking P2 and P3 respectively, with another Ford GT40 Mark IV down in P4. The winner outright was actually deemed to be the one least likely to actually finish the race, let alone win it. So some interesting facts about the top 3 finishers of this race, the Ferraris and the Ford GT40. They actually was the first cars to break the 5,000 kilometers mark for the first ever time, plus other records such as the fastest and furthest, new lap record, and the biggest engine to win, obviously that being the 7-litre in the back of that Ford GT40, as well as a number of other class records. So this was a pretty big step in terms of Le Mans racing. By the end of the event, in all honesty, it was a fairly comfortable win for the Ford GT40 Mark IV, winning by an unbelievable 4 laps over P2 and P3, which seems like an absolute eternity considering the kind of length of this track. You'd really be expecting it to go down to the wire, and it did not happen here. The car least likely to essentially win this outright race really just kind of stormed away with it. Like I said, it came from the second hour and that was it. It just never looked back. It was a very, very dominant win by this 67 GT40. Another little interesting tidbit to note is the fact that this was one of the only 10 Fords that actually didn't have a problem the entire race. It went through smooth sailing, and I believe that actually shows with the fact that it just outright won it by 4 laps after 24 hours of racing. So there we have it. That is a bit of a story on the 1967 Le Mans winning car, the 1967 Ford GT40 Mark IV. More sleek and aggressive looking, a very, very fast car, a car which kind of battled against the odds. Again, allowed Ford to beat Ferrari at their own home ground race, and in all honesty, this is a fantastic machine, and I feel like it is very much forgotten in comparison to some of the other Ford GT40s that managed to take that Le Mans win. It's the one that realistically concluded this era of Le Mans racing, one in which is down in the history books as some of the most exciting racing ever to happen on a racetrack. So what would happen to Ford after 1967 in terms of Le Mans and racing? Well, guess what? It won again in 1968 with the JW Automotive Gulf Oil Ford GT40, driven by Pedro Rodriguez and Lucien Bianchi, taking the outright win at Le Mans. However, that was ahead of 2 Porsches, and realistically at this point the battle of Ford versus Ferrari was pretty much done with at this point. Ford had taken it to Ferrari, knocked them off the pedestal for a good number of years, and really kind of put Ford and their motorsport division on the map and cemented the Ford versus Ferrari era at Le Mans and sports car racing as one of the most famous of all time. So there we have it. Thank you so much for watching. I just thought I'd do something a little bit different in terms of some GT7 content, kind of bring it into the real world and talk about some of those kind of legendary cars which feature throughout the game. A lot of their stories seem to be kind of forgotten to time, a lot of them, and you know, doing some research on these cars and kind of just digging into their history on why they are so famous and why they are so loved among motorsport enthusiasts, and maybe even kind of teach people about why these cars are just absolutely special and the reason I guess GT7 classes them as legendary cars. So I will be doing some more modern and more classic ones in this series. I just find it rather quite interesting. It's something I did really enjoy making, so thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy this, don't forget to leave a like, comment and subscribe. Turn those notifications on so you don't miss an upload from me, and I will see you all in the next one. I'll have my Discord, my Twitter, my donation link and all that good stuff down in the description below, so if you want to check them out and, you know, kindly go ahead and join the Discord and stuff, that'd be absolutely fantastic. Thanks for your support recently, guys. Have a great day. Peace.